I want to welcome Sam McCarter.
Thank you.
To our series of interviews that we're doing on people in our church that have been in the military. And we're making a videotape, of course, and it will be stored in our archives here and in the library. And you'll get a copy. And we'll have one in the downtown History Archives Committee. I forget what it's called, but anyway, we just want to welcome you, Sam, to this interview.
Thank you.
And just let you do most of the talking. I'm going to start out so that people that don't know may know a little bit more about your background. Maybe tell us like where you come from and how you got here. Where were you born and raised?
Okay, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, all my life, well, up until I was 19 years old. I can remember where I lived. I can remember my phone number. I can remember so many things that far back. I can't remember too much today, but I can remember way, way back. And I had like 5 sisters, 3 of which live in Memphis right now. But I left Memphis in 1955 when I joined the Air Force. And the reason I joined the Air Force is my best friend that I grew up with in Memphis, Charles Meadows, still remember him. I just had to go in too, so 2 weeks later I joined the Air Force right after him. And I didn't realize that what had happened by me joining 2 weeks later, because if I had joined the same time he had, I would have had the benefits of the Korean GI Bill, the war, which at that time meant a lot of education advantages and also a great sum of $300 cash when you served your 2 years or 4 years or whatever it was after you were discharged. So I didn't get that, and of course back then $300 was a lot of money.
That's right.
So I went ahead and joined the Air Force, and I had to ride a train to San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base. And I had never ridden on a train, and it was a 2-day ride, and I was like 19. It was really something new to me. And so I got there, and there was a flight of 60 guys in my flight in basic training. It was like 3 months of training, and it was pretty rough. I mean, it was full days. And out of the 60 guys, 59 of the guys were from Pennsylvania. And I was the only guy from the South, and I had that Southern, I still got a Southern accent somewhat, but probably. But then I really had one, so they called me Hill Jack. That was my name in there. Out of the 59 guys, now listen to this, 20 of them were black guys, and they picked on me like you wouldn't believe. But there was one black guy, and I'll never forget his name, Leroy Gamage from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He stood over me like a mother hen, and those guys would not penetrate. They would not bother me. So it was great. And I need to check to see if he's still alive.
He was your bodyguard.
He was my bodyguard. And we were there for 3 months, drilling, all this kind of stuff. And the worst thing you can have, I know you heard of KP, which is kitchen patrol. It's actually you work in the chow hall for like 4 o'clock in the morning till about 6 o'clock that afternoon, and you're busy, I mean, all day long. They got you doing something. They got what they call cooks that run the place, you know, and they'll keep you, have you doing this and that. So you finally get off of that. So we did a lot of marching, I mean, just all the time, slapping them heels down. I'll never forget that. And I guess the worst thing they did to me was give me a OD set of coveralls that would fit a guy about 3 times my size. I think the pockets were down to almost my knee. And I'll never forget that. And I had to wear that big old fatigues for the whole time. And I was there in 3 months. And another thing I want to bring up.
You never did wash them?
Oh, yeah, I washed them, but that same fatigues. But out of that 60 guys from Pennsylvania that came to Lackland Air Force Base, they have a Sampson Air Force Base in New York. That's a basic training, Air Force basic training place. Now, why they shipped almost 60 guys out there to Lackland, and me, the little guy from Memphis, Tennessee, I was a lone guy in that flight. They could have sent them to Sampson. I don't know why, but anyway, that didn't work out that way. And talking about Leroy Gamage and me, there's a senior advisor in your flight that looks over you. and he's going to assign you to what base he thinks you're going to be best suited for. And I wanted to get a base that was close to Memphis, Tennessee, because my wife Jenny, we were engaged, and I wanted to be close where I could come home, as soon as I could. There's two bases. One was radar school at Biloxi, Mississippi. It was electronics. It was a 9-month school, and there was one at Scott Air Force Base, which is a radio school at Belleville, Illinois, and that was 300 miles from home. And I was so fortunate, I don't know how I got it, but he gave me Scott Air Force Base, and also Leroy Gamage, the guy that helped me so much in base training, with the same school at Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. And I was out on the road with my uniform every weekend hitchhiking to Memphis. And I went home every weekend. And of course I didn't stay that long. I had to turn around and come back, but that was great. So we had the radio school, which is basic electronics. It was taught, it was a 9-month school, and learned a lot about radios and all this kind of stuff. And when I got my assignment from the school, I went to Donaldson Air Force Base in Greenville, South Carolina. And they had the oldest airplanes there. I've seen the old crew of aircraft, the C-119s and the C-124s, the real old stuff. And the electronics was old stuff. Anyway, I worked on that I was there 6 months, but one of the main reasons I left is I had a staff sergeant, I'll never forget his name, Either Robinson. He just didn't like me at all. He had me on every detail he could find. And for some reason, the assignment came down to Shaw Air Force Base, which is 100 miles down the road. And at that time, you got 6 cents a mile travel pay. So I got $6 to travel from there to Shaw Air Force Base. Now, they had the new bombers, like the B-66 bombers there. And that was great. It was a lot more modern. And I really enjoyed it. I had 2 stripes when I left there. And I went to Shaw Air Force Base. That was at Sumter, South Carolina. And I stayed there 4 years. And I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And I was like a bench technician. I worked on the different systems in the aircraft. And we had about 8 different systems on the aircraft that was navigation systems. Like, for example, if the aircraft is landing, you want to go left or right of the runway or up and down. The electronic equipment we work on gives him exactly where he's going to fly to zero that in to land. It also have an altimeter that tells him how high he is. Another system that tells how many miles he's from the station, and a radar system that gives what's in front, just lots of different things. So we worked on that, and I worked on the bench on that for 4 years. Then I was fortunate enough to get an assignment to the Philippines, to Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And my wife loved it. She just absolutely loved it. She loved the Air Force more than I did, really.
Well, when did you and Jenny get married?
In 1957, 13th of April, 1957.
That's the same year I got married.
Really? And
I got married in 56.
Okay, and then she came on with me to South Carolina then. And we were together there after we married, because we had to wait till we got that big allotment check coming in and all that stuff. So we spent 4 years in the Philippines, and I came back to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, at Hampton, Virginia. I spent 4 years there. That was very nice. And I got to thinking, well, I'm not too smart in electronics, and they had an advanced electronics school at Biloxi, Mississippi for a year. It's a super advanced stuff. I didn't realize what I was getting into. But I went to school 6 hours a day, and I studied another 8 because it was so tough. But I got through it. It was a year. And after that, I was assigned to San Bernardino, California, to Norton Air Force Base. And that was a nice base in California. We'd never been to California. We were there 4 years. So a lot of bases I stayed 4 years, and that was one that I stayed 4 years. And believe it or not, after that 4 years, I got another assignment back to Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. So we spent actually 5 years in the Philippines. And the Filipino people are some of the best people in the world. If you ever get a chance to go to the Philippines, they're really poor. I mean, it's like the rich and the poor. And a lot of them speak English. I mean, most of them speak English, just fluent English. Plus, they got their anyway, their language they speak. So you can't say they're dumb because they can speak 2 languages. I barely speak one. But anyway, we had almost 3 years at that time. So overall, we spent about 5 years in the Philippines. And I came back from there to probably the worst assignment I ever had was Lubbock, Texas. Reese Air Force Base, and I spent 4 years there. And that's the Dust Bowl, but it was training pilots. It was T-37, T-38, little flying, a small aircraft that they fly to train in. And man, they would fly 300 or 400 missions a day. It was just work you to death on the radios and everything else that went bad on that stuff. I stayed busy the whole time I was there for 4 years. And that was, they had what they call a base of preference after you've been in so long in the service. And I always wanted to go to McCarter Air Force Base in Washington State because it's such good fishing and hunting and all this kind of stuff up there. And it's just, good weather and everything. Not good weather because it rains all the time. But anyway, we went up there and we spent 4 years there. So it's almost, I retired from there on the 1st of May, 1981. And we made our way back to Georgia. And my father-in-law had, the reason why we ended up in LaGrange is my father-in-law had bought 30 acres of land here off of Roanoke Road out here. And he said, if you'll move home, we want to get us together. Her sister already lived there, right up from the 30 acres. And he said, if you'll move down here, we'll give you 10 acres apiece. So I said, okay, fine. Has it got a hill where I can build a house into? And he says, yeah. So he gave me a parcel of land where I could build into an earth-sheltered home. And that was really what I was interested in. So I retired. I was 46 years old when I retired, and I didn't go to work for anybody else. I just built my house. It took me a little over a year to build that house. And I did all the work except for the cabinets, kitchen cabinets. And I had just a few little things done. And so that's worked out good. That house is going on 33 years old now.
And you built it, and it's lasted.
It's still there.
Well, that tells us you've got good sense.
Yeah, it worked good because you can walk in that house, and it can be 10 degrees outside, and it's 59 degrees inside. It's like just like instant warmth when you walk in.
You don't need to heat it or cool.
Well, it's sometimes you take the chill off. You can wear a sweater or a little, a long sleeve shirt or something, but it's just enough to maybe chill you a little bit. But you can throw a little heater on because I've got a fire in there. And I used to burn wood, but I don't anymore because it's too much trouble to do that. But it's just amazing how nice it is inside when it's cold outside.
You've never had any problems with moisture?
Yeah. Now you do. I had the big dream of putting what they call cool tubes in the house. That was a big thing back in the 80s, where you dig about 14 foot down and you run these pipes in the ground about 200 feet, and that brings the cold air through those tubes and back into the house, and it cools it off. Well, that didn't work for me. There's too much humidity in it. So I had to put a small air conditioner unit in the house to, cool it down, to get the moisture out. But yeah, that's about it. But how much more time we got?
Oh, we got all the time you want. I was very interested in the type of house you built.
Yeah, it's different.
You got all this earth
on the sides and the back.
But I guess
it's not on top though.
On the sides.
It's on the sides and back. Yeah, it's
right.
About
well,
2 foot.
I didn't
2
think
foot off the ground. Yeah.
But I guess that the humidity that it acquires is based entirely on what the humidity is outside.
Yeah. Well, you do have humidity in there, but it's not that bad. I mean, you can cool it down pretty good. But I went on to say I didn't work anywhere. I built me a little wood shop that I made crafts for about 3 or 4 years, like little tables and stuff. And I stayed real busy at that for a while. Then I kind of got in the junk business, and I had a building down here in LaGrange that was a 40 by 80 heavy-duty commercial building that I tore down, and I put it in a field out there. And the markings I put on it had drifted off of it, faded out due to rain and stuff. And I put that building back up. And I had the help of Harold Johnson here in the church.
I know Harold.
He helped me a lot putting that building back together because it was a miracle to get that thing back. I'm talking about a big building, 40 by 80, a big commercial, So I've got that thing filled up with junk that you wouldn't believe, like a thrift shop. And I have a yard sale once a year, and people come through there and buy stuff or this or that. But I've got so much stuff, I don't know what I'm going to do with all of it right now. And I hadn't had a yard sale in a couple of years now, so I really need to get after that and do that again. But I have the thrill of going to yard sales because you just never know what you're going to find. And I generally end up buying too much stuff. And doing away with it and this and that.
Sometimes I think people go to yard sales to buy things so they can have a yard sale. I guess some of them do.
Well, the bad thing about my wife, Jenny, is if I take her yard selling and she gets mad at me because I'll say, oh, please don't buy that, because she wants to buy everything she sees. And that house has got so much stuff that my garage is so full of stuff that she's bought and wants to put back in the yard sale, my yard sale, and I don't have room for it. So I quit letting her go. I just quit letting her go to the yard sale because she'll buy. She can't refuse not to buy something. But she's a number, and if you don't believe it, ask Dr. Baxter. He'll tell you. She's a real number. But like I mentioned to you earlier, my memory is really fading away on me. And I can remember back when I was in Memphis. I can remember my phone number, my address, like 3747 Archie Avenue. 44157 was my phone number. They only had 4 numbers then. And we were so dirt poor that we didn't even have a clock. And I had to call 85261 to get the time to find out if I was going to make it to school or not on time. Now that goes to show you. And I can remember her address in Memphis, 4094 Ronnie Road. But if somebody walks up in front of me and I'm trying to remember their name, I can't pull it out. So it's not too good a thing. It's not fun getting old.
And it's not unusual. You're mentioning about being poor when you were a child.
Yeah, real poor.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that will see this tape that had the same experiences.
I can remember being hungry. Now, a lot of people can't do that, but I can.
Well, that is different.
I can remember being hungry.
Well, tell me, getting back to your time in the Air Force, and do you have any regrets about getting out and not staying in another 6 or 8 years?
I absolutely wish I couldn't. I had spent so much time in there, and the problem with race relations and stuff like that was so bad when I decided to retire that, as a matter of fact, I had a choice when I retired that I could put my retirement papers in a year in advance, and I did that. And that made sure I was getting out, because you can't change it after you make that decision. So about 6 months down, at that time, I had about 300 or 400 people, between 300 and 400 people that worked for me. And I was fortunate, I'm not bragging or anything, but with the good Lord's help, I was able to get up to the grade of E9, which is 9 stripes. And I had a lot of authority and respect then. And I got to thinking, 6 months down the road, you know what, I'm going to be Mr. Nothing. And I've been that way for 33 years now.
I've been that way,
Mr. Nothing.
Everybody that retires faces that.
So, but it's hard to think about that when you're in the military and you've got prestige, this and that, and all of a sudden you got thinking, well, there's coming a day when I'm going to get out and I'm not going to have these stripes on my arm anymore. I'm going to be Mr. Nothing. And I've enjoyed being Mr. Nothing.
If you had it to do all over again, would you make your career a military career?
I definitely would. That's the best thing that ever happened to me. Of getting out of school, working a couple of years, and joining the service. I'm so glad my best friend decided to join the Air Force, because that's what made me do it. And it was kind of a rough road going up. And I can remember a couple of things that you mentioned. It says things that happened to you. I can remember being stationed in Vietnam in Cam Bay one time, and we worked, we worked 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and on electronic stuff, same stuff. And just one night, I was going to the mess hall at 6 o'clock, and I was fixing to go up a hill to the mess hall. It's about a 20-foot hill. And someone set off some flares right behind me. And I jumped, I swear I jumped clean up that hill almost. And because Cameron Bay was the best place you could be in Vietnam as far as being the safest, but there was a lot of what they call sappers that got under the wire, and they would shoot mortars in there. So you didn't know. You had, in your barracks, you had sandbags up to here all the way around it, to keep from, if you did get hit, that would probably wouldn't kill you, but you might live through it. But anyway, that scared me pretty good. That's always stuck in my mind. Now, you're talking about all these people get blown away, in the war, which I didn't see, but and I was fortunate not to see that, but that was scary.
When you were talking about your career, you didn't mention Vietnam, and I knew you had been in Vietnam. How long were you in Vietnam?
Well, that's the only tour I spent in Vietnam. That was from the Philippines, where they sent us over 90 days, what they call TDY, temporary duty. And so I went one time. And then I had one isolated tour to Yuban, Thailand. And before I went to that was from California. I had to go to a 4-month school in Biloxi, Mississippi for LaGrange, which is a bombing system that electronically tells the fighter aircraft that he's within 50 feet of the target. That thing is so accurate, it can drop a bomb right on it. So I went to school for that system for 4 months. Then I went to Yuban, Thailand. And there, the aircraft were bombing Vietnam. That's what the job was, to load up and bomb as much as they could in Vietnam. There's millions of bombs were dropped in Vietnam. It's unbelievable.
Well, Sam, this is good talking to you about your military service. And
There's one more thing I got to tell you. That really excited me. It's my wife, Jenny. When we were stationed at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina in 1958, I went home and we got paid once a month. Can you imagine getting paid once a month? And we got a check for $137.10. And then I had to go to the paymaster and he'd give me $96. So that's all the money we had to live on for a month, was $137.10 and $96, which we all got at the same time at the month. So we had to go the whole month and to make it to the next month.
But you had your quarters.
No, you had to pay your rent too.
Oh, I thought
I was
you got
paying like $40 a month rent there.
Okay.
And another dumb thing I did, we moved to Camden, South Carolina, which was 25 miles from the base. But gasoline was only 25 cents a gallon, so it wasn't that bad. But what I was going to tell you is when I got home one day, Jenny had told me, I've lost the allotment check. And she was joking, but I didn't know it. And she held me for a good little bit on it, and I was really, climbing the walls with it. And she said, I was just kidding, or April Fools or something like that. I could have killed her.
You didn't know what you were going to use to eat on, did you?
Oh, man, I'm telling you, if you don't have no money, you're in trouble. So, anyway, that was one of the worst events.
You always heard these experiences during your life. Money's not everything.
Yeah.
It is if you don't have any.
You got that right. I'll tell you what, we didn't get rich, and we barely made it, but it was tough.
It's been a wonderful life.
Been a wonderful life. Jenny did not want to get out of the Air Force. She wanted to stay so bad. And if I could have got over the racial tensions and all in there, and I could have stayed the other 4 years, I could have stayed 30. But I just couldn't handle it. I said I had to get out. And it was primarily because of race. It was beginning to be a bad thing. So, and then I was protected so much from the black fellows in Pennsylvania that were giving me trouble, back then in basic training.
You had Leroy.
Leroy, I'm telling you.
You got to go. You got to look up Leroy.
I know. I tried to not long ago, but I'm gonna look him up again and see if he's still alive. I'm gonna sure thank him again and maybe try to get to see him.
Well, that's a great idea.
But that's good. Yeah, but I've had a good life with the military. Really have.
And you've had a good life here in LaGrange.
Yeah. We. I'll tell you the reason we started to come to this church. We started at East Vernon. We don't live on a couple of blocks from Vernon church there, Vernon Baptist. Went there for about a year, and then we came to First Baptist. And we heard this guy with this weird language from England, and that hooked us. So we've been here over 30 years now.
Well, this is a great church.
It is, yeah. Wonderful.
I can't think of anything but good things about First Baptist.
Yeah.
And we're glad to have you and Jenny and all your other relatives as members. And we thank you for this.
I'm going to say one more thing.
Oh, you can say two more things.
This one more thing. We have enjoyed it so much, but the only thing we dislike about LaGrange, Georgia, is the heat in the summertime. And Jenny and I travel, RVing. We've had every kind of vehicle you can think of to go out west. And out of the last 20 years, we've been out west, about 18 of them, the whole summer, up in the mountains or wherever. And of course, I hurt my leg real bad the last 2 years, and the other one I had to have operated on. So we didn't go the last 2 years. And so we kind of cut back on that now. But this year was the best summer I think we've ever seen in LaGrange. It wasn't really that bad.
Well, you can go just 300 miles up the road and be in the mountains.
Yeah.
Without going out west.
And I can go 3 miles down the road and be in a real nice campground, too.
Yeah, so, but it's still hot.
Yeah, but you got air conditioners. But anyway, I wanted to throw that in, but that was it's been great. We love LaGrange and love the people, and like I said, if Jenny had her to-dos about it, she would still be in the Air Force if she could be there at 73, I think, or 74.
Oh, you just told her age. She's going to be mad.
She will be mad at me now. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, thank you, Sam.
Well, thank you for interviewing.
It's a good interview. No, it's good.
I know I probably forgot a lot of stuff.
Everything you said was
Stumbled
very
on it.
Yeah, very meaningful.
Stumbled on it, probably. But.
And we're going to have a copy of this for you, and
Okay.
the copy will go in our archives here at the church and in the library. And I know one goes in the historical building downtown, and one goes someplace else I can't remember. But anyway, we'll have you a copy in a few days, and you can show this to all your...
Well, I hope I turned out pretty good. I wouldn't realize I was going to be filmed on this thing, but I thought it was just going to be just a talk.
You look as good as you usually do.
That's true.
Well,
Yeah.
you take care, and God bless you, and thank you for this interview. And unless you have anything else to say,
Nope.
we'll say goodbye to everybody.
So long.